People who are no longer bound by NDAs, what are some surprising secrets that you can expose? Story 1. Manipulation of data to give false impressions of reliability was something I saw quite blatantly utilized with little repercussions. My company was struggling to meet on-time delivery schedules and for numerous years was as embarrassingly low as 40%. A new manager comes in and within months we are now boasting an on-time delivery rate on a brilliant 95%. Turns out all he did was change what constituted an on-time delivery. Each time we knew a product would be late, we'd notify the customer of the delay and ask them to confirm they still wanted the order. If they still wanted the product, the on-time delivery would be recorded against the new expected date, as opposed to the original promised date. Company literature was being sent out boasting of our 95% on-time delivery, now amongst the highest in the industry, when in fact we were by that point meeting less than 30% of initial delivery schedule targets. It was so simple that I'm sure numerous companies are getting away with such underhand tricks. Story 2. About 20 years I signed an NDA with a very large record company regarding their attempts to get into selling their catalog online, streaming, sales, etc. It was a minefield because they were still wary of pissing off high street retailers, and that's where the charts came from. These attempts were frustrated by their top-level corporate guys. One week they all went to a "What is an MP3" conference in Buenos Aires to get them up to speed. The thing is, they spent so much time partying, the only talk which seemed to stick was the scare tactics about how teens could scrape MP3s from the web, and they could be copied and redistributed easily. When they came back, every item in the catalog was ordered to be scrubbed from the web. No 30-second previews, nothing should be audible. Not a hint of audio. Lock it all down. Put all the tapes in a chest and seal it with concrete at the bottom of the sea. That's going to make everyone go back to CDs. Good old profitable CDs. Story 3, I briefly worked at a university in South Florida in the late 90s and early 00s. I was chosen to be on an academic integrity team, basically reviewing claims of plagiarism and cheating and deciding between the 5 of us whether it is valid or not. We were made to sign NDAs when we accepted the invite to be a part of the team. There were 3 instances where an employee that was taking Kielus there clearly cheated, and the issue was brought to our attention. Those 3 times, the cheating was blatant. All 3 times we were told to let it go, as it would look bad for the university to have it get out. I'm not sure if this is common for other universities, but at the time, I was under the impression that it was common practice everywhere. It was ultimately one of the main reasons I ended up quitting. I was and still am disgusted by it. Story 4. I once got hurt at work, a concussion specifically, on camera. I have a history with concussion-like symptoms. I was 99% sure I hit my head, but I lost all memory of the accident. I ended up missing a few weeks of work due to the severity. I wasn't 100% sure if I had some sort of mental breakdown, so asked to see the video so that I could confirm my injury. They flat out refused to let me see the video and told me there was no evidence that I hit my head. I offered to sign away any rights to sue, and I wasn't even asking them for hospital bills or paid time off. Long story short, I sued them, I won, and had to sign an NDA. I got my wages and hospital bills paid that I wasn't even asking for, and was finally able to get the video. It was a 100% no doubt head injury, complete with a loud bonking sound effect, and me falling down and leaving a dent in the bulkhead that I hit. After the fact, the office staff told me that they were under orders from upper management to lie, and saw they didn't see anything on the tape. They said this was standard for anyone who gets hurt, to just lie about it and let it play out in court. I obviously quit soon after. Story 5. IT consultant of many, many winters. The most critical applications in banking and finance run on badly outdated machines, hold together by duct tape, prayers, and compress and dust, standing in dark, wet corners in mostly forgotten basements. Also, those systems are written in the most obscure and long-dead programming languages, or even directly in Embler for a certain chipset, written by code wizards in their own idiosyncratic dialects, who are now long retired or even dead. Backup systems are mostly non-existent, or the data tapes are worn down to basically transparent tape. Even had a case where a cleaning tape from '99 was still in the bay due to the robot being faulty. If a cleaner or janitor pulls the wrong plug to find an outlet for their vacuum, there is a decent chance that whole banking institutions begins to crumble. Most of those systems will also never be updated due to their legacy status, aka. We don't know what this is doing or even how it is doing what it is doing, but it is a critical part of our whole infrastructure, and nobody dares to touch it, but we will never invest the necessary sums to analyze those systems, write documentation, or even replace them. Story 6. I worked at a grocery store. We had lots of pre-packaged produce and other baked goods. I was told to pull off all the expiration date stickers and replace them with new dates because they still looked good. There were so many things they did that probably could have gotten them fined heavily if I had known better and reported them. They were a local chain that had like 10 stores. Apparently, they only have one store left now and are very close to going out of business for good, according to my parents. Story 7 was never bound to an NDA somehow, but sat in to oversee the technical aspects of Herbalife meetings. We're talking meetings with the highest level sellers in their board. They spoke about how to manipulate low-income and unintelligent people to make them millions of dollars, how to teach others to scam others to make them more money. Story 8. The Victoria's Secret fashion show in Shanghai in 2017 was an absolute show of corruption, kickbacks, and ups. The Chinese government took VS for an absolute ride for so much stuff, and that's not including all of the middlemen who wanted to get their beaks wet as well. The amount of money that VS spent to have their fashion show in China was astronomical, and got them, at a minimum, investigated by the US government for the amount of bribes they were paying. Story 9. Not really exposing a secret here, but I am disgusted by it. My job requires me to look into the minutes of meetings. One of my clients was a school. During one of the meetings with the board of directors and the parents, they addressed the bullying in the school. One of the parents said, "Just leave it, let the weak ones fall out," and that was the end of it. Story 10. I worked for a very prominent sports broadcast. Hardcore fans would always get so angry when the broadcast was narrative-focused, but the reality is that majority of viewership metrics aren't that hardcore minority that are so extremely vocal on things like social media and Reddit that would complain about narratives, etc. Production meetings weekly were about keywords and key narrative lines to essentially sell these teams and players to the audience over and over and over, because majority of viewers only tune in for a moment or a game, so you got to repeat it to make it stick. And it did work in terms of those narratives actually sticking and building player brands. So much was manufactured and about working together with broadcast and teams to build fandom. That is the #1 goal. Could we go mildly in-depth on a hardcore level? Yeah, and the talent team always wanted to, but production had the data and was like, the fandom immediately turns off when we do that. So I guess the dirty secret is, sports broadcasts, hardcore analytical fans, are never the target demographic. Probably not a secret, but some sport fans really miss that LOL. Story 11. Not under an NDA, but I am not allowed to say this to people. My employer is an HCM company, and the department I work in administers COBRA. For our friends not in the US, COBRA is a law that allows an employee to pay out of pocket to keep benefits they had while they were employed after a separation. This has been a thing since 1986. In many cases, your employer has to reinstate coverage with the carrier. There is no punishment if they do not. They have to inform you of your eligibility within 45 days or face fines with TAMRA, which is part of the IRS. We are not allowed to tell you that your former employer hasn't let the carrier know. We have to take the blame. There are some clients where I work where we do inform the carrier, but carriers like Blue Cross, Anthem, and Cigna are right now refusing to accept the reports we send them, and your coverage remains inactive. But the majority of the time, the client, employer, is responsible for reporting to the carrier of your COBRA election. There is no maximum time allotted for reinstatement. I've seen cases where the employer, client, has not reinstated benefits for 1 year until the beneficiary tried to use the coverage and was denied. And they had been paying $2,500 a month just for their medical. This was not illegal, just irresponsible. Reinstatements are the #1 issue I deal with, and it's daily. I've tried to get my employer to make an effort to ensure the client reinstated in a timely manner, and they refuse, saying they do not want to anger the client. I've also written letters to President Biden and VP Harris explaining the situation and to present policy. An expansion of TAMRA to include reinstatement deadlines would do wonders. Story 12. Financial institutions push their own portfolio solutions, knowing they are inferior investment vehicles to other investments. They offer BC, they make more money off them. They pay the advisor more money for their propriety funds, which are often available for much cheaper fees through direct brokerage. The secret is in banking that their profit comes before yours always. There isn't a bank on the street that hasn't prioritizing selling you a better investment over their own more expensive version. You don't get advice, you get sold. Story 13. I worked for a healthcare facility that started collecting private patient information to share with insurance companies in order to secure better contracts. This wasn't diagnosis data, it was lifestyle data, including spending transactions. They were trying to find ways to obtain that information when I was leaving. When I asked if patients were aware, they always gave a vague answer, which essentially meant no. Edited for grammar, Story 14. A previous CEO was attempting to court the Chinese government for a deal on manufacturing his product overseas, as is tradition. During the exact same time, there was a lot of controversy about national security and keeping certain products from foreign manufacturers. The CEO boasted about how we will be pursuing domestic subsidies that required us to make the product in the US. Market was bullish, but he was also trying to buy a media company at the same time, and the news was claiming he had the money, but what he really had was a consortium of Chinese investors, which personally I don't give a if better qualified Chinese workers would make a better product. But the US Gov thought he was the poster child for American innovation, and here he is courting both world powers. Business owners, particularly billionaires, have no spine or convictions. I seriously don't understand how the ruling CL has such carte blanche on nearly every part of their life and business. The US worships them entirely too much when they lie, cheat, and steal. Of course, the retail traders of Wall Street have drank the Kool-Aid and are basically flat earthers at this point who disregard any reality of the situation of a failing company and inexperienced CEO. But the CEOs deserve their pay, per se. Story 15. In a tech support role, one manager used to boast his team's average call times were the lowest in the company. While average call times were in the 12-17-minute range, his team was constantly under 10 minutes. His team was awarded multiple times, and his strategy was adopted company-wide to all customer service and technical support teams, including our internal IT teams. That strategy was under a strict NDA, as we did not want to allow competitors to emulate it. When our call center would go bid on contracts, it became an awesome metric. Our customer satisfaction scores are on par, but we have call times 20 to 30% lower than our competitors. The dirty secret of the NDA that I was not allowed to disclose? Their big method? Just hang up on people. Straight up. Find a way to say, okay, go ahead and do that and call back if it doesn't fix it. Then hang up. Don't wait for confirmation. Okay, so reboot your PC and your problem should be solved. Thanks for calling. Click. Eventually, they came out with more useful metrics that tracked things like first call resolution, which absolutely shredded this company, and they went out of business a year or two later. Story 16. In Prince George's County, Maryland, county transit bus drivers are instructed following an accident they are not to speak to anyone until a supervisor arrives on the scene. An approved method for not talking, especially to other drivers involved, is to feign injury. There's actually money allotted to pay the fines related to wasting 911 and emergency resources because analysts determined it was cheaper than costs associated with drivers accidentally admitting fault. There's also an entire audit and analysis team related to accidents because of the sheer volume of people who falsely claim to be on a bus during an accident. Story 17. Many years ago, my dad was manager of the meat department at a chain grocery store. A new store manager came in and told him that whenever steaks started looking a bit gray, rather than mark them down a bit, they were still okay to eat, just older and unappealing in appearance. He was to slice them laterally and position the bright pink interior up to repackage and keep them the same price. My dad soon quit over that, as he couldn't in good conscience do it. Story 18. I used to work in packaging, and there was a big promotion coming up for the 18 World Cup. Basically, the beverage company we were working with thought they'd be able to sell more of their product if they were able to correctly predict the winning team to use for their promotion when the winner was actually revealed. Obviously, if you waited for the champion to be revealed, it would be too late. The supply chain has got to start well in advance. Basically, the beverage company did correctly guess champion team, and a lot of people involved in this deal had to sign NDAs basically stipulating that they couldn't go around shouting, "I know France are going to win," because XYZ company have asked us to print all this France merch in advance, etc., etc. You don't have to be Nostradamus to guess the champion of the World Cup, but it's the fact the company we were dealing with were suspiciously certain of it, along with the secrecy surrounding this knowledge. Story 19, I was never under an NDA, but the hotel is under new ownership, so I guess I can say it now. The hotel had no internet connection starting around 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., like clockwork, every night. IDK if it was just a system fault or if it was cost-cutting. But without internet, the security cameras didn't work or record anything. The fire alarm system doesn't work either. The alarms go off, but it doesn't call for help. So if we had a fire that started at 3 a.m., for example, then unless someone else that's driving by calls it in, I have no idea what's happening. One night we had an alt happen in the parking lot. The police needed camera evidence, and our cameras didn't record anything because the internet was out. So that was fun, explaining to the detectives. Story 20. Used to work for government. One of the department heads didn't realize his mic was still on during a meeting break and said some less than flattering things about his colleagues. He came to me the next day and wanted it removed from the tape and made it very clear that my career would be limited if I didn't oblige. I obliged, though I had already made a copy to my personal server earlier that morning just to have leverage in the future, should I need it. Story 21. I worked for a company who worked for a company who worked for Cisco networking. Cisco had created a new product for small business, basically a cheaper version of their normal routers and switches. When hired, I was one of about 20 people, most of whom had zero networking experience. We were told that it was done that way because they wanted non-techies specifically learning the product. This made no sense to me. We were told that we had to get CCNA certifications before we could go live. We were then given a month of boot camp training and personal study sessions. It took about 2 months and a few tries for everyone to get the certification. The problem was that we were 20 kids with little to no technical or networking experience, working on a new product that we technically weren't versed in. We were given generic CCNA training and no training on the product itself, and expected to handle all tech support for the entire country. I once had a call to fix a connectivity issue for a chain of banks. The guy who called me admitted to making $450 an hour and asked me to take my time solving his issue. He called the guy making $20 an hour. Believe it or not, it was the click tech support question. Is it plugged in? That solved his issue. He forgot to plug in the power. I'm not sure why this was supposed to be tied to other banks, but I'm guessing that it was at a main hub and something wasn't going out to the branches or something. I didn't ask. 90% of the employees on that team quit within the first 3 months of working there. Story 22. If your company hires a MSP, we don't know about half the time when you call in. Whatever a field NG, and maybe if your local IT wasn't fired, what we could pump out of them. We're lucky to have PWDs into your AD and have no clue if you use any weird programs or how they work. That's on you. If it blows up, I'll fix it, but I don't know about Photoshop, Intuit, etc. Story 23. I worked for Hewlett-Packard about 15 years ago testing all their printers. I had to sign a 10-year NDA saying I wouldn't reveal their trade secrets. Their printers sucked then, and they suck now too. I'm not an engineer, so I could never tell you how the printers work anyway, or rather don't work. Story 24. I worked for a company that oversees and enforces self-regulation for one of the power grids in the United States. My job was to help secure it against cyber attacks and to help write the regulations that enforce those protections. I had panic attacks on Sunday nights because I knew at work the next morning we'd go over the list of everything not compliant, and the lawyers would argue they were, and nothing would get done. Many times the lawyers would tell me that I wasn't interpreting what was written correctly. Then I'd remind them that I wrote it with a committee, and if they didn't believe me, they could go look at the minutes taken in the meetings. Instead, they would just document their justifications for being compliant and not actually secure anything. The U.S. power system is now so vulnerable to cyber attacks that it is only a matter of time before millions of people have their lives thrown into complete disaster and potentially hundreds of thousands that will die. I just can't even think about how bad things are now. Story 25 feels weird posting this as I'm a big-time lurker and not technically under any NDA, but I was working for a medical devices company where the financial director was also the production director, who instructed the production teams to use a prototype calibration machine for their main product, prenatal ventilators. The electronic engineer who designed the prototype was not happy, rightly caused a big fuss and ended up resigning. That guy was an absolute hero. Big respect. That company kind of shattered my perspective on ethical engineering roles, and I ended up changing industry. Story 26. Worked in hospitals for a while running labs, you see. We lab people know every patient that is in the hospital. Once we run their tests, we know their general outcome. Some patients come in a bad way and end up leaving when they recoup a little bit to leave another bed available. And some patients don't come in that bad at all. It's after a medic that isn't specialized in the field that patient's needs when they start getting worse. I've seen this happen a ton of times. And when eventually the patient dies, everyone is hush-hush because we know it's medical negligence and are liable for a lawsuit. We see the lab results. We see that your star medical staff are real S, but can't say to anybody, including the family of the dead person. One goes real cold and learns to absorb all that while working in hospitals. Not to mention that almost all medical and nursing staff are each other. Story 27. My wife used to be an oceate in a well-known multi-level marketing company. I won't say which one. She dragged me along to one of their How to Get Rich in This Business seminars, where someone way up in the pyramid was speaking. The speaker at one point was advising the audience on how to commit tax fraud by deducting everything imaginable and then some on your taxes as business expenses. Some of it was borderline, but a lot of it was just straight up tax evasion. My wife was still in her true believer phase at that point and thought the secrets of the universe had been revealed to her. We argued about it for a couple weeks afterwards until she finally agreed to ask our tax guy about it. And he basically said, "LOL, that's totally fraud. I hope you like the color orange." Worst part was the reason the speaker was advising everyone to commit tax fraud was so you can invest more back into your business, which translated from MLA speak means keep pumping money into the pyramid and making us rich, suckers. Story 28. I used to work for a tech company that boasted about its cutting-edge innovation. The truth? Most of the so-called breakthroughs were just repackaged ideas from late-night brainstorming sessions fueled by too much coffee and not enough sleep. The real secret? Our best ideas were born during the lunch breaks when we actually relaxed and talked about what we loved, not what we thought would sell. Sometimes the best innovation comes from just being human. Story 29. A certain advertising agency had been using personal data from users that they had purchased for huge sums of money to help with finding demographics and selling products. I was hired as part of an independent team to sift through user data and sales data to show the amazing advantages of having that personal data. After 3 years, we pretty much determined that the personal data did not affect sales whatsoever, but our report still was basically how cool and great the purchase of personal data was. My team lead, who had the title of data analyst expert, basically admitted that his position was kind of phony and has been jumping from office to office raking money since the social media data boom. I'm pretty confident in saying that social media has immense amount of personal data, but it actually doesn't translate into making more money. At the end of the day, advertising is advertising. Story 30. Not really an NDA because they never thought people would know, I think. After getting my degree in biochemistry, I was unemployed for a while seeking a new job. Needing money, I applied to everything and anything and landed a data entry gig for a pharmaceutical institution in my country where I had to move data from an obsolete program to the new one. Except to do that, I had to have complete and total access to the database, which among other things told insurance companies which brands of medicine to use preferentially when prescribing them for the whole country and all insurers. I would have been fully able to change brands now at 5th position to 1st if I'd wanted to, and at no point my work was really checked, except to see if I was using copy-paste right the first hour or so. When I pointed this out to the guy supervising me, he just said, "Oh, usually the people that do this just don't understand what they copy, so it's fine." I have too much integrity to do so, but I still wonder how much money I'd have been able to make had I contacted one of the lower-placed companies. Story 31. A former staffing company I used to work for would send invoices to companies they had placed people with before that were actually fake, knowing they were fake, with the hope that the payables department wouldn't ask questions and just pay it. It did actually work sometimes, but most of them would say, "I think this was for X candidate and we already paid it," and then we'd delete the invoice. But if they paid it, then it was free revenue. After I left the company, I sent an anonymous note to the auditors. Story 32. I signed an NDA just to drop off clean clothes at a right-wing tech billionaire's house. Seems like he has big parties often, and eyes wide shut stuff happens regularly, but it wasn't happening in the middle of the afternoon when I was there. There was a guardhouse, and the guard, who made me sign the NDA, had an ex-Special Forces kind of vibe. Story 33. Y'all would be surprised at the amount of investment in commercial real estate the Saudis have in this country. I was under an NDA to not discuss the financial backer of a MIV project, valued at the time of around $440 million. 2008 ninths dollars here in the D.C. area. In the same land deal, our firm, and those that had to work on the project, had to have an NDA for the sale of a large chunk of land in the same development to a company that doesn't exist that built a MIV data center next to the MIV data centers in the D.C. area. We were given more than market value for the land and told not to talk about it. We just amended our site plans and scratched that section off the plan. Story 34. Companies who send emails are required to include an unsubscribe link, but there is no regulation on what the link does. A lot of the time, the link is intentionally broken so you can't unsubscribe. Also, the companies are required to remove you from the mailing list at your request, but the regulations do not say what they can do with your information after that. Most companies will simply remove you from the current campaign and dump you into 10 to 100 more because now you have verified that you are a real person. And because your information is now verified as valid by your clicking the link, they will sell your information as verified data for a profit to other spammers. Story 35. An e-commerce trading platform I worked for is allowing fraud to increase profits. My job is to combat fraud on the site. Our job is to find fraud to help build data points to build rules, so we can help keep members safe. Well, recently we have been turning a blind eye to it, specifically dropshippers using false identity. That are obviously bad. It dilutes our good sellers, with fraudsters who just use programs that just open, list, and sell items for them. They kept stringing us along with promises of raises, only to say they weren't really planning on it. Instead, profits increase from these fraudsters and damaging small good sellers. The only people benefiting from it are the people on top. Story 36. A few years back, I was selected to be part of a AAA game developer's YouTuber program. The amount of hoops you have to jump through are insane, and the competition and bitterness between content creators is bad. The program was badly run too. Certain games weren't getting the same level of time and help from the program leaders, community managers. Favorites were obvious, and even what info you got was based on where you lived, with US creators favored more heavily. Arguments were common. It was a toxic environment that was tiered when it wasn't supposed to be. If you're creating content on YouTube and want to get into a program, make sure it's for you. Do your research. Story 37. When I was in the Navy, our ship went into radio silence for a week. No outside contact at all, zero communications. During that week, my CO decided that we should vaccinate the ship for anthrax. This was a multi-step injection that needed to be administered across a period of time. After everyone was injected and vaccinated, we got a message from Fleet that told us not to give that vaccine out because it wasn't approved by the FDA. So the CO had us sign an NDA about it. It didn't go in our medical records, and I have some drug in me I know nothing about. Yay. Story 38. Computing hardware vendors are going to release new cards that are faster and have more memory than the current generation. Shocking, I know. I always found it a little absurd how tightly they protected details that seemed completely obvious to anyone with the tiniest knowledge about the hardware. I also had knowledge of some specs of chip designs that never made it to market. That was a little more interesting. Story 39. A place I worked at used to buy companies, fire 80% of the staff, ingest anything of value within 12 months, and the remaining 20% were engulfed into a continual cleansing cluster, where the bottom 20% were fired annually. We would tell every single founder that we would keep their company intact and take care of their people before they signed. Then after they signed, we didn't even wait a day to ask for a stack rank before just blanket firing everyone within 2 weeks. Usually, we would buy a company for something small. There is a person we want to work for us, or we want a specific patent. One time, the company owned a 3-letter .com domain wanted, actually fired everyone from that company after shutting it down almost immediately. Story 40 marketing agency I used to work for would take 50%, 70% of the budget that was supposed to be spent on ads and just pocket it. Anytime a client would ask for access to their Meta Business Manager, all hell would break loose, LOL. And then when we'd give them access and had to actually spend all of the money we were supposed to, we were instructed to purposely make the campaigns perform worse so that the client wouldn't wonder why their campaigns are suddenly performing so much better. Next theme. What's a bitter life lesson you learned from your longest relationship? Story 1. The love most friendships have is greater than most romantic relationships. You can talk every day and say you love each other, but then she can break up with you through text for no reason, and you never see each other again. The friend you watch sports with or whatever will still be stoked to see you 10 years from now. Story 2. Look at who you are by the end of the day. Are you with someone who makes you happier, nicer, better, kinder? Do you feel like a better person overall because of the time you spend with them? Do you enjoy them? Can you be honest with them when you need to? Is this your best friend or someone quantifying your value to others? Are you doing the same to them? Is it a rough patch, or is this life? Can you bring this person around your friends and family? Are they a teammate or a chore? No relationship is going to be perfect or even easy at times. They're going to be a pain in the. Neither of you is going to be 100% perfect for each other, and nothing lines up perfect. But by the end of the day, generally are things better because they're with you? If the answer is no, it doesn't matter how much time you spent together or how much you care for or about them or how much history you have. Put in the work to fix it, Or if that's not working, then make a choice to move on for the both of you and for yourself. It's not a failure, it's change. Story 3, figure out your relationship problems with your SO before anyone else. It's okay to get a second perspective, but I made the mistake of venting my issues to friends and they talked me into breaking up with her. She wasn't perfect, but nothing she did was outlandishly bad, and I probably ended things sooner than I should have. It's been 4 years, and I have yet to be in another relationship since then. Story 4. Often people are trying to get an unmet need from childhood met through a partner, like trying to get the love that they didn't get from mom or dad, and it ends up being a fantasy that causes them to manipulate. Externalizing what you don't think you have within to another person is futile. Seeking love, self-worth, security outside ourselves is like the sun looking outside itself for light and warmth. Story 5. Have you owned friends and interests? One of my boyfriends? My life was all about him. When we broke up, I thought our friends wouldn't take sides. They wouldn't even speak to me afterwards and would walk straight past me in the street and not even say hello. Never let them stop you from doing anything. One controlled where I worked, told me how I could dress, who I could and couldn't talk to. This is controlling and abuse. Stick up for yourself and say this is not acceptable. If it continues, leave. Story 6. Your closest friend can one day just decide to not be friends anymore for no reason at all. You could try to call MSG to ask what's up to resolve or work out any issues, but not everyone gets closure. Don't beat yourself up for it. Accept it and move on. Story 7. My deepest friendship taught me a bitter life lesson. It showed me a pattern I find in friends/partners. Our friendship dissolved in a really harsh way, and I had to go into therapy. In therapy, I became aware of the patterns and was able to stop them from forming a new friendship. The harsh reality is that life and its bonds are very fragile, even if we firmly believe they are unbreakable. Story 8. You can't save people. Watching my ex completely self-destruct and burn down every good thing in their life, including our relationship because of unresolved trauma, was one of the most helpless feelings I've ever had. There was nothing I could do but watch the train wreck happen and remove myself for my own safety. 3 years down the drain. Story 9. Take nothing for granted ever. I had been with my ex for 2.5 years before she broke up with me. She'd been sad and unhappy in the relationship for a while before breaking up, and I never did anything about it. I wrongly assumed that my lack of emotional presence and lack of consideration for her feelings would be offset by our multiple trips a year and the fact we had the same group of friends. Guys, if you're in a relationship with a girl that genuinely loves and cares for you, make sure you don't lose her. Story 10. People who mean well but don't understand how deeply ingrained their negative self-beliefs are will regularly make you feel as if you're not enough and will feel gaslit when you tell them that your side of the story is important too, or conversely, there's more than one side of the story than theirs. After all, not much is more closely rooted to beliefs than our emotions. Story 11. That no matter what someone says about their morals or how vehemently they say how much they hate Cheater, her father, and people who destroy families, they are still capable of just flipping a switch and doing the same thing. My soon-to-be ex-wife, after 13 years of saying she hated her father and knew he cheated on her mother and destroyed the family, and she never wanted to have him in her life. Guess what she did? After I got a spinal injury and my medical career went poof, she cheated on me with people at the gym, stopped being the loving, attentive mother to our kids, and moved out. Our eldest is scared of her new boyfriend because he witnessed him trying to threaten me. The fact that guy is still in the picture shows either my ex lied for 13 years or she has lost her mind. Oh, she also now says she isn't certain her father cheated, and it's different anyway. Whatever to justify her choices, I guess. Hey, I got 13 years of a person I thought the world of. It just sucks that my kids only got a short period of time with that person. Story 12. Just because it's over doesn't mean it wasn't worthwhile. People will come and go out of your life. There's a beauty in the impermanence of it all. Your time with people is made more valuable, but the fact that it's fleeting. However, it's important to allow those experiences to help you grow, not dwell on the fact that they aren't a reality anymore. Story 13. Without a solid and mutual baseline of good communication skills, the relationship is doomed no matter how well it starts off or how much you actually love each other. The glue that holds any good relationship together is trust, and the trust is held together with emotional validation and vulnerability. Without that, it's inevitable for resentment to fester when one isn't feeling heard or when there's never a healthy space to be heard. Quick aside, that's especially relevant to me. If you find that you're always expected to apologize for wrongdoing, but your significant other never initiates an apology on their own when they up, that's your ticket to reconsider whether or not it's ideal to stay in the relationship. At this point, if someone sucks at communicating, and that unfortunately applies to a lot of people, I'm not wasting my time trying to coach them on how to verbalize their feelings or how to acknowledge mine, especially if they're not already making an effort to do so regularly on their own. Life is too short to waste years on someone who always sees themselves as the hero of their own story. Story 14. You shouldn't feel the need to manage the emotions of your partner. You need to be able to trust your partner to regulate their own emotions even in hard conversations. This is a two-way street of letting go of your need for control, fear of upsetting people, and of them being able to have a mature conversation about issues without resorting to hating themselves or self-pity, or vice versa. Story 15. It's not fair for one person to pull all the weight in a relationship. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. You're not different than other girls. Your love can't heal him no matter how much you want it to. If someone's whole life revolves around you, and they say scary things and say they might as well kill themselves if you leave, leave. Stop being scared. If someone is going to hurt you, all the fear, worry, and control in the world isn't going to stop it from happening. Story 16. Some people are completely capable of imagining a future with you and discussing how you'll get married and what kids you'll have, and 1 week later, break up with you out of the blue. But genuinely, it taught me to rely on a person's actions more than their words. They can tell you everything you want to hear, but the actions are what truly tell you how they feel about you. Now I'm with my wonderful fiancé, who not only promised me those things, but followed through, and I love him for it. Story 17. There's a lot of talk from guys on Reddit about how a girl's body count, such a vile term BTW, is a major factor in whether or not they would date them. To any guy who feels this way, I truly hope you find and spend the rest of your life with someone who had never been on a date with any man but you, because that person will certainly take you for granted. How could they not? They have literally nothing to compare you to. If you only ever ate tuna sandwiches for your whole life, how would you know if they were good? When you sat down to eat one, would you be excited? Would you even care? Story 18. Even the best relationships can be cut short by disease. I took for granted that my wife and I would be dropping our son off at college and drinking wine on the porch when we were retired. We didn't even make it 10 years before she died of cancer. You don't have to live every day like it's your last. That would be exhausting. But don't turn down too many chances to make special memories. Those may end up being all you have. Story 19. It's heartbreakingly painful looking back at the happy person you used to be before hitching yourself to the wrong person for so long. Suicide sounds so comforting at times, because no matter what everything I gave up or lost because of this joke of a relationship is I can't get back. Sure, I've grown here. I'm so much smarter than I previously was, but I'm colder too. Everything is either gone now or changed beyond belief, all because I chose the wrong person 9 years ago. Annoying. I've learned to never second-guess myself. If I had trusted myself years ago, I wouldn't be in this place now. Story 20. Not every relationship should last, even the good ones. And that's okay. But after you feel your sadness and hurt and pain, you can still learn from them. Also, it's okay to walk away when things change. It's scary, but sometimes there is no fixing broke, and the duct tape will always come undone again. So walk away from them and run to a new happiness. What do I mean by that? My HS sweetheart was my longest relationship, and it ended badly after we went to separate colleges. But I will always appreciate the good things he did for me and taught me. From helping me to break out of my shy little shell and make friends, to challenging me academically, to helping me cope with my health, multiple surgeries, mental health concerns, etc. There are so many things he taught me about myself and what I want and need and don't want or need from a partner. So it was good until it wasn't, and walking away is okay. Story 21. No matter how much you trust and love someone, everyone is capable of betraying you. I had my suspicions, but I kept them to myself until one fine night the sheriff's department called to the scene of an accident. There was my GF of 8 years and a former close friend rather undressed in the vehicle. Going through her phone afterwards proved she was cheating on me and had been doing so for several months. Now, I don't trust anybody. I'm more of a put up or shut up person.